How do I register to vote in USA? To register to vote in the United States, you can follow these steps. Check your eligibility. To register to vote in the US, you must be a citizen of the United States, at least 18 years old on or before the day of the election, and meet your state's residency requirements. Find out your state's voter registration deadline. Each state has its own voter registration deadline. You can find this information on your state's election website or by contacting your local election office. Register to vote. You can register to vote in a number of ways, including online, by mail, or in person. To register online, visit your state's election website or the National Mail Voter Registration Form website. To register by mail or in person, you can download and fill out the National Mail Voter Registration Form, which can be found on the U.S. Election Assistance Commission website. You can also register in person at your local election office or at a state DMV office. Provide the necessary information. When registering to vote, you will need to provide basic information such as your name, address, date of birth, and social security number or driver's license number. You may also need to provide additional information, such as your political party affiliation. Verify your registration. After registering to vote, you should receive a confirmation from your state's election office. Be sure to verify that your registration was successful and that all of your information is correct. Voter registration deadlines. Voter registration deadlines vary by state and can range from a few days before the election to several weeks before the election. It's important to check your state's specific deadline and make sure to register before it passes. Voter ID laws. Some states require voters to show identification at the polls in order to vote. This can include a driver's license, passport, or other government-issued ID. Make sure to check your state's specific voter ID laws so you are prepared on election day. Early voting. Many states offer early voting, which allows registered voters to cast their ballots in person before election day. Check your state's election website to see if early voting is available in your area. Absentee voting. If you are unable to vote in person on election day, you may be able to vote by absentee ballot. Absentee voting rules and procedures vary by state, so check your state's election website for more information. Voter registration drives. Voter registration drives are organized efforts to register eligible voters in a community. These drives are often organized by political parties, advocacy groups, and other organizations. If you are interested in participating in a voter registration drive, contact your local political party or advocacy group for more information. Online voter registration. Over 40 states now offer online voter registration. This option allows eligible citizens to register to vote using a computer, tablet, or smartphone. To use online voter registration, you will need to have a valid driver's license or state ID card. Same-day voter registration. Currently, 21 states and the District of Columbia allow voters to register to vote on the day of the election. This means that eligible citizens can register to vote and cast their ballots all in one visit to the polling place. Voter registration requirements. When registering to vote, you will need to provide your name, address, date of birth, and proof of citizenship. Depending on your state's requirements, you may also need to provide your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number. Updating voter registration information. If you move, change your name, or need to update your voter registration information for any other reason, you will need to contact your local election office or use your state's online voter registration system to make the necessary changes. Voter fraud. Voter fraud, which includes illegal or fraudulent voting, is rare in the United States. States have measures in place to prevent voter fraud, such as requiring identification at the polls and maintaining accurate voter registration rolls. Voter registration for college students. If you are a college student, you can register to vote either in your home state or in the state where you attend college, depending on your preference. To register to vote in your college state, you will need to provide proof of your college address, such as a student ID or utility bill. Voter registration for military personnel. If you are a member of the military or are living overseas, you can register to vote using the Federal Postcard Application (FPCA). This form allows military personnel and overseas citizens to register to vote and request an absentee ballot. Automatic voter registration. Currently, 20 states and the District of Columbia have implemented automatic voter registration (AVR). This means that eligible citizens are automatically registered to vote when they interact with certain state agencies, such as the DMV. Voter suppression. Voter suppression refers to any efforts to prevent eligible citizens from exercising their right to vote. Examples of voter suppression tactics include voter ID laws, purging of voter rolls, and limiting early voting opportunities. If you encounter any obstacles to voting, contact your local election office or a voter protection hotline. Voter turnout. Voter turnout in the United States varies by election and by demographic group. In recent years, voter turnout has been highest among older voters and lowest among younger voters. Encouraging voter turnout is an important goal for many advocacy groups and political campaigns. Voter registration for individuals with disabilities. Individuals with disabilities have the right to vote and should not encounter any barriers to voter registration or voting. Many polling places and election offices are equipped with accommodations for individuals with disabilities, such as wheelchair-accessible voting booths and braille ballots. Voter registration for non-English speakers. In some states, non-English speakers have the right to receive voter registration and election materials in their preferred language. This is required by law under the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or language. Voter registration for ex-offenders. In some states, ex-offenders may be ineligible to vote due to their criminal record. However, in many states, ex-offenders are eligible to vote as long as they have completed their sentence, including probation and parole. Check your state's election website for more information on ex-offender voting rights. Voter registration deadlines for special elections. Special elections, which are held to fill vacancies in elected offices, often have different voter registration deadlines than regular elections. If a special election is coming up in your area, make sure to check your state's election website for the voter registration deadline. Voter registration for independent voters. In some states, independent voters may need to register with a political party in order to vote in that party's primary election. Check your state's election website for information on primary election rules and registration requirements. Voter ID laws. Some states require voters to show identification before casting their ballot. The type of ID required can vary by state, but common forms of acceptable ID include a driver's license, state ID card, or passport. It's important to check your state's voter ID requirements before going to the polls. Voter purges. Voter purges are when election officials remove names from the voter registration rolls. This can occur if a voter has moved, passed away, or is otherwise no longer eligible to vote. However, sometimes voter purges can be used to unfairly disenfranchise eligible voters. If you are concerned that your voter registration may have been purged incorrectly, contact your local election office. Voter intimidation. Voter intimidation is any action that is meant to prevent someone from voting, or to coerce someone into voting a certain way. Examples of voter intimidation include physical threats, verbal harassment, and misinformation campaigns. Voter intimidation is illegal and should be reported to election officials or a voter protection hotline. Voter turnout campaigns. Voter turnout campaigns are efforts to encourage eligible voters to participate in elections. These campaigns can take many forms, such as door-to-door canvassing, phone banking, or social media outreach. Voter turnout campaigns are often run by political parties, advocacy groups, and candidates. Early voting. Early voting allows eligible voters to cast their ballot in person before Election Day. This can be a convenient option for those who may have difficulty getting to the polls on Election Day. Early voting periods can vary by state and county, so check your state's election website for information on early voting in your area. Same-day voter registration. In some states, eligible voters can register to vote on the same day that they cast their ballot. Same-day voter registration can be a convenient option for those who may have missed the traditional registration deadline. However, not all states offer same-day voter registration, so check your state's election website for more information. Absentee voting. Absentee voting allows eligible voters to vote by mail if they are unable to vote in person on election day. This can be a convenient option for those who may be traveling or have other commitments on election day. To vote absentee, eligible voters must request an absentee ballot from their local election office. Provisional voting. Provisional voting allows eligible voters to cast a ballot if their eligibility to vote is in question. For example, if a voter's name is not on the voter registration list or their eligibility to vote is challenged by a poll worker, they may be asked to cast a provisional ballot. Provisional ballots are only counted if the voter's eligibility is confirmed after the election. Voter registration for naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens have the same right to vote as native-born citizens. To register to vote, naturalized citizens must provide proof of their citizenship status, such as a passport or naturalization certificate. Voter registration for homeless individuals. Homeless individuals have the right to vote and can register to vote using a shelter or transitional housing address. Some states also allow homeless individuals to use a designated mailing address or a general delivery address at a post office. Polling place accessibility. Polling places must be accessible to all eligible voters, including those with disabilities. If you have a disability and require assistance to vote, contact your local election office for information on accessible polling places and voting accommodations. Election security. Election officials take steps to ensure the security of the voting process, such as using paper ballots, conducting post-election audits, and using secure voting machines. If you have concerns about the security of the voting process, contact your local election office or a voter protection hotline. Voter fraud. Voter fraud is a rare occurrence in the United States, but if you suspect that fraud has occurred, contact your local election office or a voter protection hotline. Examples of voter fraud include voter impersonation, ballot stuffing, and vote buying. Election results. Election results are typically announced on the night of the election, but in some cases, it may take longer to count all of the ballots. If you have questions about election results, contact your local election office or a trusted news source. Civic engagement. Voting is just one way to participate in the democratic process. Other ways to get involved include volunteering for political campaigns, contacting elected officials, and attending local government meetings. Remember, voting is an important responsibility of all eligible citizens in the United States. If you have any questions or concerns about voter registration or voting, contact your local election office or a voter protection hotline for assistance. Thanks to Chat for the content.